The day had started like any other on Earth. The sun rose, casting a golden light over the vast oceans and sprawling cities. People went about their daily routines, workers rushing to their offices, children heading to school, and families enjoying their peaceful lives. Nothing seemed out of the ordinary, but little did they know, this calm was only temporary. A storm, unlike anything the world had ever seen, was brewing just beyond their reach. In the quiet corners of the world, scientists and military leaders were hard at work, their faces grim as they observed the strange events unfolding in space. Reports had been coming in for days now, unusual energy spikes near the edge of the galaxy. At first, they thought it was a glitch, some anomaly in the system. But as the data continued to pour in, they realized that this wasn't a mistake. Something was out there, something massive, moving towards Earth. The UN Security Council was briefed on the situation late in the evening. The room was filled with tension as military experts and politicians discussed the implications of the unknown presence. Satellites had detected several unidentified objects moving at an alarming speed through deep space. They were on a direct course toward Earth, and they weren't slowing down. A quiet hum filled the room as everyone turned their attention to the big screen. It displayed a map of the galaxy with Earth at its center. The objects were no longer distant dots. They were now only a few days away. People whispered nervously among themselves. Was this a new threat? Was Earth about to be invaded? The questions hung in the air like a heavy fog. But it wasn't until the sound came that the true horror of the situation became clear. It was a soft sound at first, almost imperceptible, like a distant hum carried on the wind. But then it grew louder. A deep, resonant vibration that seemed to shake the very core of the planet. The air itself seemed to tremble. It wasn't just an ordinary sound. It was something otherworldly. Something that reached deep into the human soul, filling it with dread. The sound echoed through the streets, through buildings, and into the hearts of everyone who heard it. Those closest to military facilities described it as a low-frequency rumble, like a spaceship's engine powering up. But no one could say where it was coming from. The sound wasn't confined to any one place. It was everywhere. Across every continent, from the deserts of Africa to the snowy peaks of the Himalayas, people heard the hum. It was as if the planet itself was being drawn into something far beyond their understanding. Meanwhile, inside the command centers, the world's top leaders and military officials were scrambling to understand what was happening. Satellites were detecting strange electromagnetic pulses that weren't natural. The objects speeding toward Earth weren't just space debris. They were massive, capable of carrying vast amounts of power and weapons. Suddenly, the room grew silent. A new report had just come in from the highest-level radar stations. The objects weren't slowing down. They were heading directly for Earth, and they had no intention of stopping. "Is it a ship? A fleet?" one of the generals asked, his voice shaky. "We don't know yet," the scientist at the controls answered, his eyes glued to the screen. "But whatever it is, it's not like anything we've seen before." The atmosphere in the room grew heavier. Some of the leaders had never felt true fear before. They had dealt with threats, both internal and external, but nothing like this. Nothing that felt so alien, so unnatural. The hum outside grew louder. It was no longer just a sound. It was an overwhelming presence. It seemed to vibrate through the bones of every living creature on Earth, reverberating deep inside their chests. It was as if the planet itself was alive, trying to warn its inhabitants of something terrible, something they couldn't yet comprehend. For the first time in history, Earth's defenses were put on high alert. Satellites were launched, and missile systems were readied. Fighter jets soared through the skies, prepared for whatever may come. But the humans, for all their preparation, had no idea what they were truly up against. Back in the cities, the sound grew more pronounced. People looked up at the skies, fear creeping into their hearts. Some tried to ignore it, dismissing it as a figment of imagination. Others stood frozen, unable to comprehend the enormity of what was happening. Then, without warning, the earth trembled. It wasn't an earthquake. It wasn't a natural disaster. It was something else entirely. Buildings swayed, windows rattled, and the ground itself seemed to shift beneath their feet. People screamed, clutching onto anything they could find for support. The rumble in the air grew louder, and now it wasn't just in their ears, it was in their minds. It was in their thoughts. A feeling of dread washed over the world, as if every living thing knew that something terrible was about to unfold. In the command centers, scientists and military personnel scrambled to make sense of the chaos. The hum outside grew louder still, and the air seemed thick with energy. The ground shook again, and the lights flickered. It was clear now. Whatever was out there was not of this world, and it was heading straight for Earth. The world had just entered a new era, one that would change everything. The calm before the storm had ended. The storm was here. As the tremors continued to shake the Earth, the world's leaders knew they had to act fast. With no clear understanding of the enemy's intentions or even their exact position, panic started to spread. The once calm day had turned into one of urgency, fear, and confusion. In the command centers, urgent discussions took place, while military personnel scrambled to prepare for what might be a full-scale invasion. The sky above, once clear and blue, now felt as though it was hiding something massive. The mysterious hum had been growing louder with each passing minute. The frequency was unlike anything humans had ever encountered. It was almost as if the very fabric of space was bending in response to an outside force. Everyone could feel it. Whether they were in the thick of the military operations or simply walking down the streets, a strange pressure seemed to hang in the air, weighing down on the shoulders of all who lived on the planet. Inside the United Nations Security Council meeting room, diplomats and generals had gathered to formulate a response. The sound outside was undeniable now. It wasn't just a disturbance, it was a signal. But of what? And who was the message for? "We don't know what we're dealing with here," General Harrison said, his voice stern but uneasy. "But we can't afford to wait any longer. We have to prepare for battle. The planet is counting on us." A series of reports came in one after another, each one more concerning than the last. The objects in space were moving at breakneck speed, and they were almost within range. But still, no one knew what they were, where they were from, or what their purpose was. A young analyst at the back of the room raised his hand cautiously. "Sir, we've been running simulations based on the data we've received, and there's something strange we noticed. The objects, they seem to be synchronized. It's like they're moving in a coordinated way." The general turned to the analyst, his brow furrowing. "Coordinated? You mean to say they're being controlled?" "That's the only logical explanation," the analyst responded. "We've never seen anything like this. Whatever it is, it's definitely not random. It's too precise." The word hung in the air. The thought that these objects could be controlled by a higher intelligence sent a chill through the room. For all their military might and technological advancements, humanity had never faced an enemy with such advanced capabilities. This wasn't just an invasion. It was an invasion led by someone, or something, who understood tactics far beyond what Earth had ever seen. Meanwhile, across the world, ordinary citizens began to feel the pressure of the unknown. People were starting to grow anxious. Conversations on the streets centered around one question: what is out there? For some, the strange vibrations in the air were merely a curiosity. But for others, they were a warning. Those who had studied history knew that an event like this, something so unsettling, so alien, was never a good omen. Everyone could feel it. The world was on the brink of something catastrophic. Back at the military base, the global defense systems were being activated. Satellites were repositioned to gain a better view of the approaching objects. Military ships were sent out into the oceans. The sound continued to echo across the planet, a constant reminder of the growing threat. It wasn't just a sound anymore. It was a warning. And Earth had no idea how to respond. Then, without warning, the sound stopped. A silence fell over the planet. The hum that had once rattled the air was gone. For a brief moment, it seemed as though everything had returned to normal. People looked at each other, unsure of how to react. Had it been a false alarm? Was it over before it even began? But deep inside their hearts, everyone knew it wasn't over. The silence was the calm before the storm, and they could feel the tension building again. The universe was holding its breath. The enemy, whatever it was, had only paused. But it hadn't gone away. It was then that the first official communication arrived. The message was brief but chilling. A transmission from the unknown enemy, speaking in a language no human had ever heard before. A cryptic message that seemed to vibrate in the air, causing every listener to feel its power. It wasn't in words, but in something far deeper. An ancient, guttural tone that resonated in the souls of those who heard it. The message came through only once, and the world held its breath as it was played in the United Nations war room. This is your final warning, Earth. Surrender now, or face the consequences. The air seemed to thicken. The gravity of the message was felt across the entire world. Governments and military leaders exchanged looks of shock, disbelief, and fear. Earth had been given a choice, a decision it would have to make quickly, and the consequences of that decision could change the fate of the entire planet. No one was prepared for this. No one had ever expected something so brutal, so forceful. The enemy was here, and they were not giving Earth a choice. The time for talking had ended. It was now a matter of survival. The moment the alien transmission ended, panic spread like wildfire. For the first time in human history, Earth had been openly threatened by an extraterrestrial force. As the message echoed through military communication channels, world leaders scrambled to understand what was unfolding. The looming question was simple yet terrifying. What should Earth do next? In the United Nations Security Council chambers, an air of nervous tension hung thick in the room. Representatives from every country stared at the large digital screen displaying the alien message. The eerie guttural tones still resonated in their ears, and the words "surrender now" or "face the consequences" seemed to hang in the air, impossible to ignore. General Harrison stood at the head of the table, his hands clenched in a fist. His mind raced, trying to find a solution to a problem that felt beyond human understanding. "This is not a drill," he said, his voice steady but full of unspoken concern. "This is real. We are facing an enemy that we don't fully comprehend, and we need to respond. Now." The council members looked at each other, their faces pale, their eyes wide with fear. The silence in the room was deafening until one voice broke through the tension. "We cannot back down," said President Olivia Thompson, her voice firm. She looked out across the room, her gaze unwavering. "The Earth cannot submit. We cannot let our children, our future, live under the oppression of these invaders." A murmur of agreement rippled through the room, but the question remained. How could they stand against an enemy that had the power to threaten the entire planet? How could a single species, no matter how advanced, possibly stand up to an alien race that had already proven their strength and superiority? "I agree," General Harrison said, raising his hand to silence the others. "But we need to be realistic. We don't know what we're dealing with here. These aliens are unlike anything we've ever encountered. They've already shown they have the ability to strike fear into every nation on this planet with just one message. We need to strike back. But how?" There was a moment of quiet contemplation as each leader considered their options. Then, from the back of the room, a voice spoke, soft at first, but growing louder as it gained confidence. "What if we don't fight them on their terms? What if we play to our strength?" The voice belonged to a young military strategist named Mia Lawson, who had been quietly observing the conversation until now. "We may not have their technology, but we have something they don't: our willpower." The room fell silent again as everyone turned to Mia, the young strategist who had risen to prominence for her innovative thinking. She continued with a determined look in her eyes. "What if we combine the resources of every nation? What if we create a force so overwhelming, so massive, that they will have no choice but to reconsider their threats?" General Harrison's eyebrows raised in intrigue. Are you suggesting we create a fleet capable of defending ourselves from these invaders? Not just defend, Maya said, her voice rising with passion. We send them a message. If they think they can intimidate us into submission, they're wrong. We will show them that Earth is not a world that submits easily. We will send them a fleet so powerful, they will never make the mistake of underestimating us again. For a brief moment, the council members exchanged glances, as though weighing the possibility of Mia's plan. It wasn't a simple solution. It was a drastic one. A fleet of unprecedented scale. But the more they considered it, the more they realized that it might be their only choice. Earth had to show the invaders that it was willing to fight for its survival. The time for waiting is over, President Thompson declared, her voice resolute. We will not let fear dictate our actions. We will unite our forces, and we will send them a message they will never forget. With a final nod from General Harrison, a series of orders were issued. The decision had been made. Earth's response to the alien threat would be swift, and it would be devastating. A fleet was to be assembled, not just from one country or continent, but from every corner of the world. Ships from every nation were mobilized. Thousands of warships were prepared, their engines ignited and ready to launch. Satellites were repositioned to monitor the approaching alien vessels. Earth's most advanced weapons systems were activated, and every resource was poured into ensuring that humanity had the upper hand. The world was united in its defiance, and the people of Earth knew what had to be done. But as the preparations began, a lingering question remained. Would 500,000 warships be enough to face down an enemy whose power they still could not fully comprehend? Meanwhile, across the stars, the alien fleet continued its advance. They had delivered their message. They had made their threat clear, and they waited patiently for Earth's response. In every corner of the world, people held their breath. They knew the time for peace was over. The moment of reckoning had arrived. And in the hearts of every human on Earth, one thing was certain. The galaxy was about to witness the true power of humanity. As the alien fleet drew closer, the world's nations began to move in unison. The operation to assemble Earth's warships was a monumental task. Thousands of ships had to be retrofitted, weapons systems calibrated, and crews assembled. But despite the overwhelming scale of the operation, there was no time for hesitation. Every moment mattered. Every decision could make the difference between survival and extinction. The call for action was broadcast around the world. From the icy plains of Russia to the bustling cities of America, from the dense jungles of Brazil to the deserts of the Middle East, humanity came together as never before. People worked tirelessly, setting aside differences in the face of a common enemy. Governments coordinated with each other, setting aside politics and resources to create a force unlike anything the galaxy had ever seen. In the vast, silent expanse of space, Earth's 500,000 warships began to take shape. Some were enormous supercarriers, their hulls bristling with weaponry. Others were sleek destroyers, designed for rapid strikes and agility. The fleet was a mix of ship classes, each one meant to perform a specific role in the coming confrontation. In the heart of the United States, General Harrison was overseeing the final stages of the fleet's preparation. He paced back and forth in the operations center, his mind focused. The stakes were enormous, and he knew that everything he had worked for over the years had led to this moment. "Status report," he barked, turning to one of the officers standing nearby. "All systems are go, sir," the officer replied, his voice steady but filled with tension. "We've completed the final checks on all 20,000 warships under our command. Fuel is at full capacity, and weaponry is fully operational. The rest of the world's fleets are in similar condition. It's time." General Harrison nodded, his heart pounding. He had seen many battles in his time, but nothing like this. Nothing could have prepared him for the enormity of what lay ahead. The fate of humanity now rested on their ability to hold their ground against an enemy far more advanced than they were. "Get me President Thompson," he ordered, his voice now more solemn. Within minutes, President Olivia Thompson appeared on the holographic screen. She looked tired, her eyes filled with the weight of responsibility, but her resolve was unwavering. "General," she greeted him, "how are the fleets coming along?" "We're ready, ma'am," Harrison replied, his voice steady despite the gravity of the situation. "The fleet is assembled, and all systems are operational. The crew is ready, and our forces are eager to respond." President Thompson nodded. "Good. Then it's time to show them what humanity is capable of. We're sending a message to the Galactic Empire. We will not bow to threats. Earth will stand strong." Harrison felt a surge of pride as he watched the president's determined face. This wasn't just a battle for Earth. It was a battle for every human who had ever lived. It was a battle for freedom, for the future. There was no going back now. "The fleet is on its way, ma'am. We'll be in position within 24 hours, Harrison confirmed. "Understood. I'll be in constant contact with you. The world is watching. Make it count." With the conversation ended, General Harrison turned back to his officers, his resolve hardening. He knew the weight of the task ahead, but he also knew that Earth had something the aliens didn't expect: unity, determination, and the will to fight for survival. As the fleet prepared to leave Earth's atmosphere, something unexpected happened. Across the globe, citizens gathered. They stood on street corners, on rooftops, and in parks. They watched the skies as thousands of warships rose into the air. There was no fear in their eyes, only hope and pride. This was their moment. This was humanity's stand. The final fleet set out, leaving the atmosphere and heading towards the edge of space. The warships moved in perfect formation, synchronized in a display of power and precision. Each ship was a symbol of Earth's resistance, a reminder that humanity would never be pushed around. As the last ship disappeared into the vastness of space, the people of Earth held their breath. The message was clear: we will not be intimidated. We will fight. In the depths of space, the alien fleet continued its journey, unaware of the enormous force that had just assembled to face them. The tension between the two sides grew with each passing hour. The fate of two civilizations now rested on the actions of these massive fleets. And then, as the two fleets drew closer, the first signs of contact were made. As Earth's fleet soared through the void, nearing the edge of the solar system, the immense weight of the situation settled in. General Harrison stood in the command center of the flagship, his fingers tightly gripping the armrest of his chair. The holographic display in front of him showed the coordinates of the Galactic Empire's fleet, slowly drawing closer. It was an eerie silence, a calm before a storm that would determine the fate of humanity. Each warship, whether a massive supercarrier or a nimble fighter, was lined up with precision. The fleet had never moved as one before, but now there was no room for mistakes. Every ship, every crew member was ready for what was to come. They were not just fighting for Earth, they were fighting for survival itself. "General," an officer's voice interrupted his thoughts. "We've just received an encrypted transmission from the Galactic Empire. They're demanding we surrender immediately. They've given us 24 hours to comply or face the consequences." The general's lips tightened into a grim line. He knew this moment would come, but hearing those words still sent a ripple of tension through his body. "Surrender," he muttered. "They think we're just going to give up without a fight. They're underestimating us, sir," the officer said, a hint of pride in his voice. Harrison didn't answer right away. He thought of the people back on Earth, of the billions who had given everything to ensure humanity's survival. He thought of his own children, watching from their homes, hoping for a future free of the Empire's oppression. "No," he said, his voice firm. "We will not surrender. We'll show them the strength of humanity." The crew in the command center murmured in agreement. The fleet's resolve had hardened. They knew that their response to the Empire's demand would be the spark that ignited a conflict like no other. As the alien fleet appeared on the radar, a wave of silence swept across the command deck. For the first time, They could see it, a colossal fleet stretching across the stars. Hundreds of ships, some as large as cities, all moving toward Earth at an alarming speed. The Galactic Empire had made its move. But it wasn't just the size of the fleet that stood out. It was the sheer presence of the enemy. The Empire's warships were sleek, powerful, and intimidating. Advanced alien technology filled their ranks, and their military prowess was unparalleled. Yet Earth's fleet stood firm, its ships small in comparison, but powerful in their own right. Do they know what they're facing? Harrison thought aloud, watching the massive fleet draw closer. They will, an officer replied. They'll know exactly what humanity is capable of. The order was given, and the fleet began to move into formation. Each ship lined up in perfect rows, preparing for the inevitable clash. Their weapons systems powered up, humming with energy, ready to unleash destruction. But there was one thing the Galactic Empire didn't expect. Earth wasn't going to fold under pressure. Humanity wasn't going to bend or break. The countdown began, and the atmosphere aboard Earth's warships grew heavy with anticipation. In every ship, on every bridge, the crew braced for the worst. The silent tension in the air could be cut with a knife. But then, something unexpected happened. Out of nowhere, a transmission blared through the command deck. It was a direct message from the Galactic Empire's flagship. "This is Admiral Varkoth of the Galactic Empire," the voice crackled through the speaker. "You have failed to see reason. We gave you an opportunity to avoid destruction. You chose war. So we will show you what true power is." Harrison's eyes narrowed. The Empire wasn't here to negotiate. They weren't here for peace. This was a declaration of war, plain and simple. "All ships, prepare for battle." General Harrison's voice rang out across the communication channels. The fleet responded in perfect unison, all 500,000 warships ready to defend Earth. The Earth fleet had never been more united. The world's fate depended on this moment. It was time to show the Galactic Empire that humanity could not be so easily defeated. The first shots were fired, and the silence of space was shattered by the roar of energy weapons. Explosions lit up the dark void as Earth's warships engaged the massive alien fleet. The Empire had underestimated the resilience and strength of humanity. What they thought would be an easy victory had turned into a brutal struggle. Humanity wasn't just fighting for survival. They were fighting for their future, their right to exist without fear. And they weren't going to back down. As the battle raged on, Harrison watched from the command center, feeling a mixture of awe and fury. The first wave of enemy ships exploded under the fire from Earth's fleet, but the battle was far from over. This was just the beginning. The Galactic Empire had come for Earth, and now they would learn that humans never surrendered without a fight. The war was on, and the fate of two civilizations hung in the balance. The battle raged on for hours, but the Galactic Empire had underestimated the resolve of humanity. At first, it seemed like the Empire's colossal fleet would overwhelm Earth's warships. Their ships were equipped with advanced weapons, shields, and technologies far superior to anything humanity had ever seen. But there was one thing the Empire had not accounted for: human ingenuity and sheer willpower. General Harrison watched the battlefield unfold in front of him. The sky above Earth had been transformed into a sea of flashing lights and explosions, a chaotic spectacle of energy blasts and shields absorbing the brunt of the enemy's fire. Yet Earth's fleet wasn't backing down. The supercarriers and battleships of Earth fought back with unmatched fury, firing volleys of high-powered laser cannons and missiles that tore into the Empire's ships. But as the battle progressed, it became clear that the tides were turning. Earth's forces, though outnumbered, were managing to inflict devastating damage on the Empire's fleet. The first wave of Empire ships had been destroyed, and the remaining vessels were beginning to retreat. The Empire had underestimated the willpower of humanity, and now they were paying the price. On board the flagship, the command center was a whirlwind of activity. Officers shouted orders, coordinating the movements of the warships and directing fire toward the enemy. Harrison stood at the front, watching as Earth's fleet showed the full extent of its power. The warships, though smaller than the Empire's, were fast and deadly. Each of them had been crafted with precision, designed to outmaneuver and outsmart their opponents. "Keep the pressure up," Harrison ordered, his voice firm. "We're turning the tide, but we can't let up now. Show them we won't be intimidated." A loud cheer erupted from the crew as another wave of enemy ships exploded in a bright flash. Earth's warships had begun to gain ground, their cannons and missiles wreaking havoc on the Empire's fleet. The Empire, realizing that their overwhelming numbers weren't enough to defeat humanity, began to scramble. Their flagship, the largest and most powerful ship in their fleet, tried to regroup and lead a counterattack, but it was already too late. The Earth fleet's synchronized firepower tore through the Empire's defenses, and the flagship of the Galactic Empire was soon a burning husk in space. It wasn't the end of the battle, but it was the first sign that Earth wasn't going down without a fight. The Empire's commanders had no choice but to order a retreat. Humanity had made its mark, and the Empire had no idea what they had just unleashed. Harrison's heart raced with adrenaline. For the first time since the war had begun, he allowed himself a brief moment of hope. They were winning. Against all odds, Earth was showing that the Galactic Empire was not invincible. The fear and uncertainty that had clouded the minds of humans were slowly being replaced with something else: confidence. "We're doing it," one of the officers whispered. "We're winning." But General Harrison's face remained stern. "This battle may be over, but the war is far from won." He turned to look out of the window at the stars. The vastness of space felt both comforting and overwhelming. Humanity had taken its stand, and the Empire had been forced to retreat. But the war was just beginning. The message had been sent, loud and clear. Earth would no longer bow to anyone. They had shown their strength, and now the Empire knew what it was up against. But Harrison knew this was only the beginning. The Empire would regroup, learn from their mistakes, and return stronger than ever. Earth's victory today was only a fleeting moment in a long, drawn-out conflict that could determine the fate of the galaxy. The battle for survival was far from over. "Prepare for the next phase," Harrison said, his voice calm but determined. "This war is far from over. We've just begun." And so Earth's fleet moved forward, ready to face whatever challenges lay ahead. The Galactic Empire may have been forced to retreat for now, but the stage had been set for a war that would change the galaxy forever.